Alright, this lesson is going to be the start of our congruent triangles. So we're just going to talk about what congruent triangles are and the different pieces, and then we'll learn about some specific theorems later on. So our learning target is I can state congruent, this should be pieces of triangles, and I can solve problems with congruent triangles. Okay, so we should know that congruent triangles have the same shape and size. So if you're talking about a triangle, it has to be congruent to another triangle, not a square. It's kind of duh. And it has to be the same size because that's what congruent means. This means all corresponding parts. So what it means is the angles and the sides are going to be congruent. So that's very important. We're going to talk about angles and we're going to talk about sides. Alright, let's talk about congruent statements. So when triangles are congruent, we can write a congruency statement. So this is an example of a congruency statement. A valid congruency statement must match all corresponding angles and sides. So notice that angle A is the first letter, which corresponds to angle D. And notice that it has one arc and one arc, so they correspond with each other. B and E are the second letters, and they're going to have two arcs because those two are going to be congruent to each other. And then C and F are the third letters, and they have three marks because those are congruent to each other. Same thing with sides. So look, AB is the first two letters. It corresponds to DE. So AB has one tick mark, DE has two. BC corresponds to EF. AC has three tick marks, which corresponds to FD or DF because it has three tick marks. So the congruency statement tells you which angles are congruent to which angles and which sides are congruent to which sides. So the order matters. Okay, we're going to spend more time on this theorem in a later lesson, but I want you to understand what it's talking about. So this is called CPCTC, and what it means is that corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, look at this little happy cloud right here. This means if we know two triangles are congruent, then we know that each pair of corresponding parts are also congruent. So three sides to three sides, three angles to three angles. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, we're going to list all congruent angles and sides, and then we're going to write another valid congruency statement. So sometimes it helps to draw a picture of two triangles. So I'm going to name the first one JKL, JKL, and I'm going to do the second one in the same order, PQR. So let's do the angles first. So notice J and P are the first letters, which means angle J is congruent to angle P. And then I could just do a little arc to show that. K and Q are the second letters. So angle K is congruent to angle Q. And I'm going to use two arcs to differentiate it from the first pair I drew. And then L and R are the last letters. And I'm going to use three arcs to differentiate it from all the other ones. So those are my pair of angles. Alright, and sides kind of work the same way. So, let's see. JK are the first two letters. It has to correspond with PQ. So side JK, and I put like this over top of it to know that it's a side, is congruent to PQ. And I could do one little tick mark. Alright, the next two letters, let's do KL and QR. KL congruent to QR. And I'm just going to do a line over it to know that I'm talking about a line segment. And I'm going to do two marks on the sides. and then I'm going to do the first and third letter. So JL corresponds with the first and third letter of the second one, PR. And I would use 3 tick marks. Okay. So when it says write another congruency statement, it just wants like a different order of J, K, L, but they still have to correspond. So let's do it completely backwards. Like if I said triangle LKJ, it would correspond with triangle RQP. So the statement still talks about those same 2 triangles and those same 6 pieces, but it's just written in a different order. But still a corresponding order. Okay, so I want you to pause this and I want you to draw a picture before we move on. So draw a picture in 1, 2, 3. Okay, so now I want you to use the letters that is given, and I want you to write out which angles correspond with which angles. Go ahead and try that. Pause the video and actually do it. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so hopefully this is what you got. And now I want you to try and pause the video and list the sides. So try it in 1, 2, 3. Alright, so you can check your work with mine. If you, instead of putting like WX, you put XW, that is the same thing. Instead of putting EF, if you put FE, if you just switch them around, it's the same thing. You're still referring to the same side. So the last part is just to write another valid congruency statement. So I'm just going to start with the second, third, and then first letter. So X, Y, and W. And as long as I do second, third, and first letter with the second one, then I'm good. So F, G, E. If you put a different congruency statement, as long as the corresponding parts are congruent to each other, it's the exact same thing. Okay, so now let's solve some problems with this. Alright, so notice we have our congruency statement right here. We also have a picture. Alright, so like the first letter is G and the second letter is X. So G and X have to correspond with each other. The second letter is H and then Y. So H and Y correspond with each other. And then the last letters are J and Z. So J and Z correspond with each other. And we're going to do the same thing for the sides. So if you want to pause the video and see if you can figure out which sides correspond with each other and color code it, that'd be great. That's what I'm going to do. So pause the video. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so some other things is we know that these are 2 isosceles triangles because, well, I marked over it, but those little letters, see how those have the tick marks? So those are actually the same. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just make blue, 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 and blue because they're all the same. So GJ corresponds with that side XZ, which is 18. So both the reds are going to be 18. XY is that blue side. Those are the legs of the isosceles triangle, so 27. This one's also 27. Alright. If we know that this is an isosceles triangle, if you look at that second triangle, if this is 38, we know that these 2 actually equal each other. So if I do 180 and I subtract 38 and then divide it by 2, I can get those other 2 measures. I'll get 71. So angle H and angle Y correspond with each other. Notice they're both in yellow, so it has to be 38. I just did the math, so angle Z and J are going to be 71, and J and Z are also going to be 71. Okay, and if you'll notice, if I add all 3 of those together, I still get 180. So an easy way to check your math. Alright, I want you to see if you can do this one. So you're given a congruency statement, so you should be able to tell which sides correspond. You can color code it like I've been doing. So let's do that. Let's pause the video and just color code the corresponding sides to make sure you understand which go with which. So try that in 1, 2, 3. Okay, and now you can start to set things equal to each other. So set some expressions equal to each other and solve. Pause the video and actually try it in 1, 2, 3. So this is how it should be set up, and now I'm going to solve. So hopefully you got x equals 5, y equals 53, and z equals 12. If you need further explanation, you can always message me. Alright, I want you to try this one. I want you to see if you can figure out which sides correspond, and I want you to see if you can set it equal to each other, the correct pieces, and actually solve it. So try this in 1, 2, 3. Okay, so for z, I got 17. For x, I got 24. Y, I think, is the hardest to find because you had to plug stuff in and find that angle S is actually equal to 29, and then you get that y is equal to 10. So if any of that doesn't make sense, just let me know, and I'll try to explain it a little more. So here's the last one I want you to see if you can do. So notice there's no picture, so the first thing you should do is pause the video and draw a picture. So pause the video and try this and color code it to see which ones correspond, and then actually try to solve it. So pause the video, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this EF equals 23 is actually extraneous information, like you can disregard it. All you need is the 2 blue and the 2 orange, set them equal to each other. You'll find that y equals 10 and x equals 17. Okay, let me know if you have any questions about that, and I'll be happy to explain it a little further.